The Adeptus Astartes, or more commonly known as the Space Marines, are amongst the most feared fighting force in the Warhammer 40k universe. Consisting of genetically engineered super soldiers, they are often sent on the most dangerous and crucial missions on behalf of the Imperium. They are the successors to the Thunder Warriors, an early creation of the Emperor of Mankind that was used to unite Terra. The first Astartes were the result of a massive effort by the Emperor and countless Terran scientists led by Ammar Astarte. Although initial research showed promise of added stability compared to the highly aggressive deterioration that plagued the Thunder Warriors, Ammar feared that even the Astartes would suffer the same fate. This was until the gene seeds, unique genetic materials of the Primarchs, were introduced, allowing long-term stability to be achieved, making each Space Marine a long-lived super soldier that, to some, would seem like an immortal demigod angel of death that serves the God Emperor of Mankind's will. Each Space Marine takes a considerable amount of time to make, capable of spitting corrosive venom, absorbing memories of the dead by consuming their flesh, protection from radiation, and of course operating far longer periods of time compared to a regular human. New recruits are chosen from the best warriors among humanity, and naturally this makes harsh and primal worlds prized recruitment grounds. Although hive worlds would most times suffice in terms of sheer number of potential candidates. For example, Astartes is a well-ordered and heavily defended planet and is the largest center of population within the Conar system. It serves as one of the primary producers of bolt shells for the entire system, and yet it is being used as a recruiting world for the Ultramarines. And although no longer an official recruiting world, Imperial Fists are still honored by Terran nobility, who also provide their scions as recruits for them to this day. Despite needing not just the experience but also the capabilities of the best warriors, these potential future Space Marines must ideally be fairly young, starting around the ages between 10 to 14 years old. This is due to the implants not being fully functional once a certain level of physical maturity has already been achieved. All recruits must be male, simply because the gene seed zygotes are keyed to male hormones and genetic structure. They will undergo a tissue compatibility test and psychological screening, and due to the strict requirements, only a small percentage of recruits are compatible with the implants and hypnosuggestion necessary to turn them into a Space Marine. Once all is said and done, these recruits would go on to become aspirants, and after they've completed their organ implantation process, the aspirants would in turn become neophytes. Recruits go through a psycho-indoctrination process and are conditioned to strengthen their resolve, and after receiving their final implant and fulfilling the requisite training and hypnotherapy, they become a full brother. This typically occurs between the ages of 16 to 18 years of age. Originally, a Space Marine would require 19 implants, but with the introduction of the Primaris Space Marines, 3 additional implants were added, increasing the total to 22. And due to the complexity of each implant, the removal, mutation, or failure of even just one can impact the precise functioning of the others, compromising the integrity and capabilities of the Space Marine as a whole. Because of this, the implantation process of their respective Primarch's gene seed would sometimes differ from chapter to chapter. Phase 0 is known only to the Space Wolf's successor chapters, where aspirants are made to drink a formula containing the Canis Helix derived from their Primarch's gene seed. During the test of Morkai, aspirants drink a formula containing the Canis Helix from the Cup of Wolfen, resulting in the violent transformation where the aspirant's bones would split and buckle, Thick hair would sprout from their bodies, and they would revert back to a more primal, bestial state, hungering for raw meat and blood. This solution also contributes to the second part of the test of Morkai, where an aspirant must keep his bestial side under control. If he were to succumb to the curse of the Wolfen, he would simply become yet another feral beast that stalk future aspirants. Phases 1 through 3 can be introduced simultaneously, ideally between the ages of 10 to 12. Phase 1 is the introduction of the secondary heart, the simplest and most self-sufficient, allowing a Space Marine to survive his other heart being damaged or destroyed. Phase 2 is the addition of the Ossmodula, a small but complex tubular organ that secretes hormones that boost bone formation of the skeleton and encourages the absorption of ceramic-based chemicals that are in the Marine's diet. It takes approximately 2 years for the bones to increase in size and the rib cage to interlock and fuse into a solid bulletproof mass. And phase 3 is the addition of the Biscopea, a small implant inserted into the chest cavity used to release hormones that encourage vast increase in muscle growth throughout the body. It also serves to lay down the foundation for many of the later implants. The new Primaris implants are introduced during Phase 3 Alpha and Phase 3 Beta, ideally between ages 12 to 13. Phase 3 Alpha introduces the Sinew Coils, also known as the Steel Within. It's a cybernetic implant, reinforcing the Space Marine's sinews with durametallic coil cables that contract with incredible force, magnifying their strength beyond that of even a regular Space Marine, adding an additional layer of interior defense. Phase 3 Beta adds the Magnificat, also known as an amplifier. It's a thumbnail-sized lobe inserted into the brain's core, used to secrete hormones that increases the body's growth function while intensifying its more advanced systems, especially the Ossmodula and Biscopea. And the third and final Primaris implant is the Belisarian furnace, also known as the Revitalizer. It's a dormant organ that connects to both hearts. It expels a self-manufactured chemical similar to combat stims to aid in regeneration, and upon activation in extreme stress or trauma, it will resume its dormancy, taking some time to build itself up again. The next steps are Phase 4 to 5, introduced simultaneously between the ages of 12 to 14 years old. Phase 4 introduces the Haemastamen and is implanted into the main circulatory system, a tiny implant used to increase hemoglobin content in the blood, making it more efficient at carrying oxygen around the body, turning the blood a bright red, and it also serves to monitor and control the actions of the Ossmodula and Biscopea implants. Next, we have the Larraman's organ, a liver-shaped organ about the size of a golf ball, placed within the chest cavity and connected to the circulatory system. It generates and controls Larraman cells, which are released into the bloodstream if the Space Marine is wounded. The Larraman cells would then attach themselves to the leukocytes, or white blood cells, to be carried to the site of the wound, where it would trigger upon contact with air to form a near-instant patch of scar tissue, sealing any wound. Phase 6 is introduced sometime between the ages of 14 to 17 years of age. It is also when an aspirant would begin hypnotherapy. Phase 6 would add the Catalepsean node, implanted to the back of the brain, a pea-sized organ that influences the circadian rhythm of sleep along with the body's response to sleep deprivation. If a Space Marine is sleep deprived, the node would cut in, allowing the Space Marine to sleep and remain awake at the same time by switching off areas of his brain at a time. It cannot replace sleep entirely, but it does allow the Space Marine to remain aware of his surroundings while resting. Phases 7 through 9 are also introduced simultaneously, ideally between the ages of 14 to 16 years of age. Phase 7 is the introduction of the Preomnor, essentially a pre-stomach that neutralizes poisonous or indigestible foods. No digestion takes place in this organ, and it acts as a decontamination chamber that can be isolated from the rest of the digestive tract in the event of particularly troublesome intake. Phase 8 is the introduction of the Omophagea, also called the Remembrancer, allowing a Space Marine to learn by eating. Located in the spinal cord, but is actually connected to the brain, 4 nerve bundles connect the spine to the stomach wall, giving the Space Marine the ability to read or absorb genetic materials consumed. This implant transmits the gained information to the Marine's brain as a set of memories or experiences. And lastly, we have Phase 9, the Multilung. It activates when a Space Marine is placed in a low oxygen or poisoned atmosphere, acting as a highly efficient toxin dispersal system. Phase 10 is the introduction of the Occulobe, sitting at the base of the brain, providing hormonal and genetic stimuli that enables a Marine's eyes to respond to optic therapy. This also allows the apothecaries to adjust the growth patterns of the eye and light receptive retinal cells, resulting in far superior vision for the Space Marine, even in low light conditions. Phase 11 is when the Lyman's ear is added, providing an immunity to dizziness or motion sickness, allowing a Space Marine to consciously filter out and enhance certain sounds. It completely replaces the original ear, but is indistinguishable from a normal human ear. Phase 12 is the addition of the Susan membrane, or the hibernator implant, initially implanted above the brain, but eventually grows and merges with the entire brain. With sufficient training, a Space Marine can use this implant to enter a state of indefinite suspended animation, either consciously or as an automatic response to extreme trauma, keeping him alive indefinitely. This implant, however, is ineffective without follow-up chemical therapy and training. And even then, only the appropriate chemical therapy or autosuggestion can revive the Marine from this state. Phase 13 is the introduction of the Melanchromic organ, controlling the amount of melanin in the Marine's skin, allowing for increased protection from radiation. Phase 14 to 15 will be introduced between the ages of 15 to 16 years of age. Phase 14 would introduce the Oolitic kidney monitor that monitors the entire circulatory system, allowing other organs to function, and together with the secondary heart, this implant allows the Space Marine to filter his blood very quickly, rendering him immune to most poisons. This, however, comes at a price, as emergency detoxification renders the Marine unconscious while his blood is circulated at high speeds. Phase 15 is the addition of the Neuroglottis. Implanted within the Marine's upper nasal passages, its primary function is to enhance the sense of taste to such a high degree that the Marine could identify many common chemicals that allow him to even track a target by taste. Phase 16 to 19 are ideally introduced between the ages of 16 to 18 years of age. Phase 16 is the addition of the Mucranoid, creating a sweat-like substance that coats the skin and offers resistance to extreme heat and cold. It provides some level of protection in a vacuum. However, this can only be activated by outside treatment and thus must be applied before Space Marines fight in a vacuum environment. Phase 17 is the Betcher's Gland, consisting of 2 identical glands, implanted either into the lower lip, along the salivary glands, or into the hard palate. It works in a similar way to the poison gland of venomous reptiles by synthesizing and storing deadly poison, which the Marine himself would be immune to. This gives a Space Marine the ability to spit a blinding poison, which is also corrosive enough to, eventually, burn away even strong metals. Phase 18 is the introduction of the Progenoids, which also comes in a pair, one situated in the neck and the other within the chest cavity. It's considered a vital gland, representing the future of the chapter, with its primary function being the production of new gene seeds within the bodies of the Marines themselves. Upon reaching maturity, each gland will develop a single gene seed corresponding to each of the zygotes which have been implanted into the Marine. Taking between 5 to 10 years to fully mature into a gene seed, it can then be extracted and used to create more Space Marines. And with the refinement and increased stability of the Primaris Space Marines, the harvesting time of the gene seed has greatly improved at a rate previously unseen. And last but not least, we have Phase 19, the Black Carapace, the most distinctive implant, resembling a film of black plastic that is implanted directly beneath the skin of the Marine's torso. Once the organ has matured, the recipient will receive additional neural sensors and interface points cut into the carapace's surface. This allows a Space Marine to interface directly with his power armor, without which the systems within will simply not function. While operating the various vehicles of a chapter, a special spinal interface plugged into the power armor and Black Carapace would provide the Space Marine with an intuitive feel for the vehicle's systems and controls, making it essentially an extension of the Space Marine's own body. Similar to the Space Wolf's successor chapters, the Blood Angels would have an additional phase, called Insanguination. Administered by a sanguinary priest, aspirants are made to drink from a blood chalice, resulting in a year-long coma and being entombed by blood servitors inside the caskets of the halls of sarcophagi. They would remain in the care of the casket's life support systems while being injected with the blood of the sanguineous. Many would die being overwhelmed by the gene seed. Many would wake up too early and grow insane from their dark and claustrophobic existence, but many would go on to adapt, becoming the newest addition to the chapter. Additional conditioning would also include chemical treatments. Once an aspirant receives his final implant and before being initiated into a chapter, he would be subjected to numerous tests and examinations. The newly implanted organs would be monitored very carefully, with any imbalances and maldevelopment be corrected almost instantly. Though the treatment itself is greatly reduced upon a Marine's initiation, it never truly ends, with even veteran Marines undergoing periodic treatment for the rest of their lives in order to maintain stability. Hypnotherapy is also another one of the conditioning. All aspirants are required to learn how to control his new abilities, specifically those given by the Catalepsean node and the Occulobe, that requires the correct hypnotherapy to properly function. Though not always as effective, its effects are still substantial, and if a Marine can be taught how to control his metabolism, his dependence on drugs would be greatly lessened. The process of hypnotherapy is carried out in a machine called Hypnomat, where Marines would be placed in a state of hypnosis and subjected to visual and oral stimuli in order to awaken their minds to their unconscious metabolic process. Just as their bodies receive implants, their minds would be altered to release the latent powers within. As some Marines would develop photographic memories, the indoctrination process also includes psychological conditioning, which reinforces a Space Marine's respect for authority and his willingness to follow orders. This helps to strengthen their resolve, building up a psychological barrier protecting his mind from the corruption of chaos. And as their bodies mature, along with the implants, physical training and conditioning would help stimulate the implants, allowing them to be tested for effectiveness. Although the new recruitment process would only apply to any newcomers who wish to become Primaris Space Marine, it is possible for firstborn Space Marines to become a Primaris Space Marine. During the initial reveal of the Primaris Space Marine, Archmagos Call confirmed that firstborn Space Marines can indeed undergo an alteration to further strengthen their already superhuman capabilities to match their much larger and more powerful cousins through a process called the Rubicon Primaris. This process, however, can prove fatal, as there is a 61.6% initial failure rate, until Call could of course perfect the process. The Lords of the Ultramarines chapter decided that in order to ease the transition from an age-old imperial tradition with standard Space Marines to a new order that included the Primaris Space Marines, all hypotheticals would have to be put into practice. This led to their own chapter master, Marneus Calgar, volunteering to be the first test subject of the Rubicon Primaris operation, which proved to be a success, putting an end to many debates about the procedure. This process would also bolster Calgar's strength and abilities as a Primaris, while maintaining the warrior that he had always been. The process is in no way simple or easy, as all firstborns are made to face extensive and agonizing procedures, with his entire body being cut open from his head to his heels, and with his healing physiology suppressed to the point that his very life begins to slip away, all to safely implant the 3 additional organs that make a Primaris Marine. And upon completion of the additional implants, the surgeons would shock the now dead Space Marine's heart, and if he was able to claw his way back up from death, the Belisarian furnace would activate and awaken him as Primaris Space Marine.